and welcome back to Story Arcs Podcast. Today we're going to be covering Captain America Man and Wolf, which is a story arc that went through Captain America Volume 1, 402 through 407 with an epilogue in 408. It's a little bit different than some of the other things that we've done in the fact that it is fully a story that is just straight through one comic, and I don't think we've done anything that was just straight through one ongoing comic. As a matter of fact, there's backup stories through all those issues as well. And we're not going to cover the backup stories. We're just going to try to cover the main stories today. So our writer for these issues, for most of these issues, Mark Grunwald, penciler Rick Levins, inkers uh, Danny Bellamati, colorist Gina Going, letterer Joe Rosen, and the editor was Ralph Macchio. And if you're not familiar with Marvel Comics from this era, Ralph Macchio is not the Karate Kid. He is a longtime Marvel writer and editor that went through the 80s and 90s here. So, um, Gavin, got any comments before we get into the breakdown?
Um, don't think so. I think I'm ready for yeah, I mean the summary. I know this story was yeah, just a bit different, I feel like, than the normal comics we've been seeing. And yeah, I guess again just because this is now that we're recording on Halloween, it feels yeah, it feels right.
Yep. So this is our unofficial Halloween episode. That's why we chose Cap Wolf, and also this is the second time we're recording this episode as we had some technical difficulties. So the story here: Captain America goes to a town to investigate some werewolf murders, werewolf involved murders, and he ends up getting captured and turned into a werewolf by Deadly Nightshade, I believe is the character's name, who is working for a Dreadmond, another character. Neither one of these characters, I think, are probably ones that people are super familiar with. He then manages to end up convincing the other captured werewolves to fight with him, and they escape and fight against the other bad werewolves that are the townspeople essentially that have been turned into werewolves by Nightshade and Dreadman. Wolverine makes an appearance and is brainwashed, and Wolfsbane, Feral, Jack Russell, and John Jameson are all also involved in this story. If you recognize that theme, these are all wolf human hybrid type characters throughout the Marvel universe. So everybody gets involved here that has pretty much any wolf or wolf related backstory. Even though
Right.
Farrell and Wolfsbane are not werewolves, and Jack Russell and John Jameson are officially werewolves via mystic means. Yeah, not really explained very well, which you will come to see as a hallmark of this story.
Yes. Definitely a lot going on overall. Think you were pretty much done right with that summary. I think that leads in. I can talk about a few of the things generally might have liked about it. I mean, like you said, it's jam packed with characters. I feel like the most we've seen since yeah, one of the earlier comics we covered. But yeah, I mean, I feel like in some ways, because it's the first appearance of some characters, like Moon Hunter, I feel like they focus on a bit, and you do get some, a bit of character development there, and I mean, some of the lesser people that are never focused on in the stories, they're allowed a bit of room to shine, I guess. But at the same time, there's definitely like extra things going on here in this comic that don't have to do with the main storyline, unfortunately, and can kind of just get you distracted. Like, oh, was that even important? Do I need to remember that? So that's definitely one of the downsides to it to me. I don't know about your likes and dislikes.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty classic comics. I mean, this is kind of the stuff that a lot of people pick up and just assume that this is what most comics are like. Not a ton of substance, mostly there just for kind of a fun ride. Um, Definitely could have been fleshed out quite a bit more. The plot is sometimes there, sometimes logical, not all the time though. And I talked a little bit about there's backup stories, but then there's also there's a subplot that is leading into the next storyline, because this is part of ongoing comics. There's a subplot that doesn't really have anything to do with anything involving D-Man, and we do not have enough time to accurately explain D-Man. I think in this in this show. So culturally, there there's not really a lot of cultural significance here. For me, the only thing I really had down for cultural significance is Cap Wolf is just he's cool as fuck, and yeah, Captain America Werewolf.
Right, right. I had a little something. I feel like with one of the main characters, the Nightshade you brought up, they definitely did play a major role. Being a black female kind of doctor scientist kind of role. Doing all the experiments on the werewolves. That was, good to see that in a prominent position, especially when I know researching it a bit, you've seen how her character might have started out as just kind of a more sexual object, not really focus on anything, of their
Yeah,
abilities.
she was still a scientist, I think, in her first appearance, but yeah, very much like a black exploitation type character pulled from those movies of that era in her first appearance. I think she has a lab coat in Cap Wolf though, right?
Right, right. She's looking pretty
Yeah, she gets a
respectable
full
overall in
yeah.
comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially I mean, especially for the '90s, we're talking about the '90s actually having some cultural sensitivity and some
Yeah.
women that were wearing clothes. That is
It's impressive.
significant,
Yeah.
right? '90s comics did not have that a lot. Not a lot. I think we talked about this. Not a lot through our lens. That was, it's not really something that I think where you come from has any bearing on how you read this story. It's pretty much again mostly for fun, so that you're not really supposed to take much away from it. Um, and again, not a lot of classical literature connections. There is, I will say, however, you know, werewolf stories. There's werewolves of pretty much every form and function in here. You have the ones here that are turned by science. Of course, Jack Russell, Werewolf by Night, has kind of more of a curse background, if you know anything about that character. John Jameson doesn't turn into a wolf through his gym in this. He has lost the gym. Dreadman has it. We'll get into that. But his origin is typically the Moonstone, I think is what it's called, that turns him into a werewolf. And then, of course, we have the Marvel mutants that are wolf based mutants that are involved here too. So um, our next section, we typically go the hell is our next section, and so something weird that stuck out, and for me that was pretty much everything. I mean, it's just all great '90s weirdness and pseudo mystical, pseudo scientific, pseudo every background idea that you can come up with. They just make it work.
Yeah. And for me, I chose something in particular because I feel like in comics, stories where the typical protagonist armor, that people have, I thought for once there was something in here where Dr. Druid, that's helping out Captain America, seems to be killed by the villain here, gets his throat cut, bleeding out, everything, but apparently he turns out fine, and they don't really, explain too much about that. So that was a really, what the hell? How is this guy, living? Does he have special, invincible
Yeah, there's a
powers?
there's a line. There's just like a throwaway line where Cap is just like narrates to himself, like, "Oh, well, maybe he used his powers to stop from dying." But then like two panels later, he's like actually like a dead body, and so that doesn't even work, right? Like he thinks something about like, well, maybe he stopped the bleeding with his mind so as to not die, and then he just comes back, and yeah, nothing, no explanations, nothing. Uh, as is pretty much the bar for this comic. So let's jump to the awards now. So best character, Gavin. Who's your best character?
Um, yes, mine was going to be the main baddie, which was Dreadman slash Star Wolf, since they had with the power of the Moonstone, had a pretty cool, transformation in which even the art looked pretty cosmic in itself. The Star Wolf. I won't necessarily yeah spoil how much of a fight the Star Wolf put up, but it's a cool character. I like his just the way that armor looks outside of it. Actually reminds me a little bit of the Grim Reaper that we just covered on the Guess the Legends. It's that the classic boxy style armor and with the badass purple helmet. So
Yeah, the
I,
Dreadman's armor prior to the Star Wolf. Yeah.
yeah, so
Um, yeah, for me, Cap Wolf, duh, Cap Wolf. I mean, he's Captain America as a werewolf. That's the best thing that I've ever heard of, ever. So, um,
easy.
for me, the worst character, and again, if you are unfamiliar with podcasts, the worst character can either be the worst written or the worst actual like character. And in this case, for me, it was Farrell. She is a character at this point that's part of X Force. Cable asks Shatterstar in just a one panel question, like, hey, where'd Farrell go? And then later we see her, and then Cable shoots her, and she's knocked out, and that's it. Like, no, Farrell's not involved with the rest of the story. She just like heard the calling of the wolves, and then Cable's like, nope, none of my team members are going to go do anything on their own or have any agency. And then, Cable does have a significant part kind of at the end of the story and kind of resolving the story. But yeah, Farrell gets nothing. She gets no agency. might, as, might as well just not even have a personality or a brain or anything.
Yeah, had very few frames overall. In the
Yeah,
comic, I definitely noticed.
yeah, I
Um,
think like two.
yeah. And so mine was, yes, another character that was there, but really didn't have much of an impact. D-Man that you referenced earlier, I think, was benching a little bit with Cap, hanging around, but he didn't, one also had a line where he wasn't, didn't help someone in need. He wasn't even the classic, hero that you should be. So he was a very side to the story because he wasn't definitely didn't find any werewolves in this episode. So yeah,
Yeah, I think honestly, I think he was like I said, he's kind of a subplot to set up the next story that if I'm from my knowledge, was not a very good story, and yeah, doesn't do anything. Like he just doesn't do anything.
hmm
And honestly, I don't even think that whole thing sets up the next story that well because you get a glimpse of it in that 408, the epilogue. Like I don't even think his whole thing does much for that story. So,
on top of that.
um, what was your wow moment, Gavin?
Yes. So mine, I think, had to do with the battle that they had, I guess, with Star Wolf, and kind of just really the whole wrap up to the story because it was quick, right? I mean, I feel like you had a good 5 episodes where short really told you the problem with all the werewolves and what he's trying to do. He was finding his pilot originally, and then especially if you didn't read the epilogue, where at 6 of 6, if you just read that comic, it doesn't wrap up barely anything. Like, you know what I mean? Captain America's still a werewolf. And so just the wrap up to the whole story is wow, they did not do a good job with it. So that's mine.
Yeah. So for me, mine's more of a positive. Wow, it was. I love the art of Star Wolf. I'm a big sucker for that cosmic drawings inside the outline of a body. And when you make it a werewolf, that's even better. Uh, our final award, dumbest decision for me, Dreadmond makes the decision to lure the animalistic wolf-like superheroes somehow. Like there was something like I'm fairly certain that it was they made the decision. It was or like you should have at least thought about that if you were calling to werewolves that you were going to end up bringing Wolverine and Wolfsbane, who is at this point like a on X Factor, which is a government team, and like she's in the papers, and yeah, it's and yeah, John Jameson. Like you had to know that John Jameson was an astronaut and had connections to the Avengers and was Cap's pilot, right? If you paid attention to anything, so why would you capture him? Of course, Cap's gonna come looking, right?
Right. Yeah. Just asking for trouble. Mine has to do with the Moon Hunter character that Captain America meets early in the story. Basically, Classic flips it on him and captures him and throws him in his own pit for the werewolves that he was capturing them all in the first place. But they when he goes to throw him in there, he says, make sure he doesn't have any weapons, but he still had his whole suit on, his whole Moon Hunter suit, and it was his den that he created himself. And I know they made a little comment about it, in the story, but yeah, he immediately escapes from it is the, obviously the real draw. So yeah, trapping him in his own dungeon that he made with all his tools available to him. How did you expect that he'd
Well, yeah, and
stay guy?
then they also leave him to free the still brainwashed Wolverine too. And also,
Yep.
there was so many wolves. Like Cap escapes that pit with all these wolves. Like you could have been like, "Hey, you wolf, like keep an eye on him. Just let us know if
Just
something's going on."
anybody, anyone
Yeah.
will to stand guard.
Well, but then of course, yeah, and then yeah, not to spoil things, but it's resolved very quickly after he escapes too. But in like I said, in kind of a silly way. Um, so the score. Time for the score. So we give a little wrap up of what we learned, who we recommend this for, and give it a score and put it on our board. So still have not bought a board. I apologize. We will have an actual physical board and a post up at some point to let you keep track here. So what I learned: cool ideas are cool. Don't listen to the haters. If you want to make Captain America a werewolf, make Captain America a werewolf. Who's gonna stop you? It's the '90s, right? And I mean, who do I recommend this for? If you like werewolves and Captain America, or one or the other, or just stupid '90s crap, which is half the people within 10 years of my age.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just fun silliness, and yeah, I don't know. Is there anybody else you'd recommend it for, Cam?
Um. Yeah. I mean, I feel like with any of these, you're gonna learn or see a little bit of action. And sometimes people, comic lovers, I think, are just looking for those fights or the hero to find the weakness that's, maybe solves the fight. So it's actiony. It's for those that are more looking for maybe just to see, some werewolves fight. It's not too much deeper than that.
All right, and so finally, score, Gavin.
Yes.
What did you have here for your overall score out of 10?
So yes. So mine for this general, yes, good werewolf story, but generic came in at a 7.0 even for me.
And actually, I ended up giving it a 7 for me as well. So that slots it, I believe, just above the Spider-Man Maximum Carnage, but still kind of low down list. Which, yeah, I mean, I think that's appropriate. Honestly, seven's probably about as good a score as it could ask for. It
Hmm.
again, it was fun, and it didn't need to be more than fun. And if you want fun comic that reminds you a little bit of Halloween stories, and has Doctor Druid who is about a discount Doctor Strange. It's pretty great, and yeah. Gavin, any last thoughts before we sign off here?
Uh, no, just thanks for watching as usual. This was yeah, it was a fun one to do. I feel like we've got a good mix of them we covered so far. See ya.
Yep. And if you enjoyed this episode, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I've been Andrew. This is Gavin, and thanks for tuning in for Story Arcs Podcast.